Tonight, President Biden's pledge to Americans trapped in Afghanistan: we will get you home. The president vowing to mobilize every resource to evacuate Americans as flights resume from Kabul after an hours-long pause. The president saying there's no indication Americans are being blocked from the airport, but a trapped U.S. citizen telling us that's not true. New images of chaos outside, the Taliban in the streets, and heartbreaking video, a baby handed over the wall to a U.S. Marine, and where that child is tonight. Also, the secret State Department cable warning of the country's collapse back in July. The president asked about that today. We'll show you how he responded. Breaking news on Pfizer's COVID vaccine. How soon the New York Times reports the FDA could give full approval. And the new CDC warning for cruises. Hurricane warnings up in the Northeast as Henri takes aim. New England bracing for its first hurricane landfall in 30 years. The new track tonight. Our NBC News investigation into hundreds of heat wave deaths this summer and the push to make air conditioning not a luxury but a right. The newly named host of Jeopardy stepping down amid controversy. And The Graduate, defying the odds and inspiring America.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. The military airlift to evacuate Americans, allies, and Afghans who work for the U.S. appears tonight to be morphing into a broader refugee relief operation, one captured in some more gut-wrenching images of chaos and heartbreak outside the Kabul airport. The pictures and first-person accounts belying a more upbeat assessment of the mission so far by President Biden today. The president pointing to the thousands successfully evacuated so far and reiterating his promise to bring all Americans home. But the president also warning of potential danger as the U.S. relies on an uneasy alliance with the Taliban to secure safe passage to the Kabul airport. Kelly O'Donnell begins our coverage.
Kabul's evacuation mission surrounded by desperation and danger. The president under pressure making this pledge.
Let me be clear. Any American who wants to come home, we will get you home.
Extending that to Afghan citizens who worked with American military.
Yes, we're making the same commitment.
Flanked by his national security team today, the president pointed to progress. 13,000 have been airlifted this week. The U.S. relying on the Taliban to let evacuees reach the airport. Today, the president revealed 169 Americans were rescued when U.S. forces went outside the perimeter at Kabul airport to bring them in. The president also claimed Americans trying to leave are not being blocked.
We have no indication that they haven't been able to get in Kabul through the airport.
Not so, according to American David Fox, who moved to Afghanistan 8 years ago.
I can say definitively that that is completely untrue.
Fox says he tried to get through checkpoints with his wife and toddler son, along with other Americans. But crowds and chaos were too dangerous.
The situation at the gate itself was extremely tense. I knew without any doubt that easily my son could have been killed on that day in that attempt to get inside of the airport.
Today, for several hours, evacuation flights were halted. A pause, officials said, was due to overcrowding at the transfer point in Qatar. The administration scrambling to secure other host countries. Asked about criticism from U.S. allies, the president pushed back.
I have seen no question of our credibility from our allies around the world.
But a key European Union official called the fall of Afghanistan a catastrophe. And President Biden has been criticized by lawmakers in Germany and the UK. The president also played down the significance of a July 13th State Department cable sent by 24 American diplomats in Kabul, warning about a Taliban takeover and urging evacuation flights.
Americans got all kinds of cables, all kinds of advice. I made the decision. The buck stops with me.
Kelly, we know the British and French have been sending some soldiers into Kabul itself to rescue their citizens. Will the U.S. start doing that?
Possibly. The president said he has not expanded the perimeter for U.S. military beyond the Kabul airport because doing so could attract more danger for American soldiers. But today said he would consider authorizing specific rescue operations to retrieve Americans and Afghan allies caught beyond Taliban checkpoints. Lester?
All right, Kelly O'Donnell with the latest in the White House. Thank you. And as the U.S. airlifts ramp back up, we are seeing images of violence and extreme desperation outside the walls of the Kabul airport. Richard Engel is with Afghans leaving everything behind to flee the Taliban.
Taliban fighters marching through the streets, dressed in all white, the color of the Taliban's flag, and a symbol they're ready for martyrdom. While outside the last remaining U.S. base at Kabul airport, chaos continues. This is what crowds have to face to get inside. Shooting, violence, Taliban whips. American troops worry if they open the gates, people will flood in. There's desperation and anguish. Marines confirm the baby handed to them over a wall is now safe at the airport, reunited with family. Inside the base, U.S. troops play with the many children arriving, trying to keep them calm, as Afghans are processed for departure and moved to the flight line. That's where we met Gina Abawi, an Afghan-American from Virginia. She moved back to Afghanistan to teach 6 years ago, when it was much safer.
It was a dream come true for me. I built a little house by the mountains, and it was really cool. And it's the saddest day of my life right now. I just cannot imagine leaving, but unfortunately, it's time to go.
You left, obviously, the house.
Everything. A small little suitcase with my laptop, and that's it.
She says she doesn't want to leave. Neither do the 25 members of her extended family going with her. We're just looking up at the Afghan flag.
I don't know how much longer it's going to be there, but this is really sad. I don't know if I'm going to be back. I'm hoping, but I don't know if I'll ever be back.
Eventually, the C-17 arrives and taxis into position for boarding. For Gina, it sinks in. This is it. These are moments that change the trajectories of families for generations. Gina's relatives say goodbye to the only home they've ever known, forced out because they don't want to live under the Taliban. Finally, boarding time. For Gina, it's a painful goodbye. For most of the Afghans on board, this is the start of their new lives as refugees. This was supposed to be only an evacuation of American citizens and Afghans who worked with U.S. troops. But because of the chaos now in Kabul and people rushing the gates, it's become an emergency airlift of refugees as well. Lester?
All right, Richard, thank you. Now to breaking news in the fight against the coronavirus and potential FDA full approval for Pfizer's vaccine. Tom Costello is following that. Tom, there were reports we could see full approval as early as Monday.
Yeah, Lester, every approved COVID vaccine right now is operating under emergency use authorization, not full approval. And some people who've been hesitant to get the vaccine have cited that as a reason. Now the New York Times is reporting the FDA is aiming to fully approve Pfizer's vaccine as soon as Monday. That may help convince some of those vaccine skeptics to get vaccinated. And once fully approved, big employers like universities and hospitals are expected to require their employees to get vaccinated. Critical, since only 51% of the population right now is fully vaccinated. Meanwhile, tonight the CDC is telling people at increased risk for severe COVID illness avoid cruise ship travel, regardless of their vaccination status, as the Delta variant continues to infect many people, including those who have, in fact, been vaccinated. Lester?
Big developments tonight, Tom. Thank you. In just 60 seconds, hurricane warnings in the Northeast as a potentially historic storm closes in. We have the new track for you and the bombshell from the newly named host of Jeopardy, what he announced today. As COVID cases surge among children, schools are the latest battleground in the fight over masks and how to keep kids safe. Sam Brock reports.
The country's long-standing clash over wearing masks has now flooded the sanctuaries of America's children, schools. Parents and demonstrators screaming after this Tennessee school board meeting.
The motion passes.
In Louisiana, a state board meeting shut down by attendees refusing to wear masks, and bans on mandates by governors from Florida to Texas, forcing the courts to intervene. The Texas Supreme Court relenting overnight, allowing school districts to keep their requirements in place for now. Florida's governor will face legal action from parents Monday, with some just asking to keep politics out of the equation.
We don't want to spread any sickness, and we don't want to get it ourselves.
But now, just maybe a breaking point from this Tennessee father of a kindergartner.
She went to school and was one of just a few kids in her class wearing a mask, which made her ask me why she had to. My answer was because we want to take care of other people.
Justin Canoe says it's a basic calculation.
It seems like a pretty simple choice. If we're wrong, they had to wear a mask. If they're wrong, someone gets sick and dies.
Canoe's words resonating as hospitalizations continue to climb. In Florida, cases just crossed 3 million, with staffing shortages ravaging hospitals.
The healthcare providers in this country are frustrated. We're tired. We're exhausted physically, emotionally, mentally. It's been a long year and a half, and it's just getting tougher for us.
Young people and students are increasingly getting infected.
These school boards are having to essentially protect kids from their own governors.
Sam Brock, NBC News, Hollywood, Florida.
Also tonight, we're tracking the threat from Tropical Storm Henri, the system gaining strength and could become the first hurricane to hit New England in 30 years. Dylan Dreyer is here with the new track. Dylan, good evening.
Lester, it's been 10 years since we've had a hurricane watch for New York, and we have that in effect now. We are looking for this storm to strengthen into a Category 1 hurricane as it moves into the warm waters of the Gulf Stream. The track of the storm has now shifted a little farther to the west, meaning New York City could even see more impacts from this storm. But Long Island and New England certainly under the gun with this one, as we will likely see a 2 to 4 foot storm surge across parts of Long Island, a 3 to 5 foot storm surge across Massachusetts. And in addition to the coastal flooding and the beach erosion and the gusty winds, we could see up to 8 inches of rain. Lester?
That's a lot of water. All right, Dylan, thank you. The suspect in the bomb threat near the U.S. Capitol made his first court appearance today. The North Carolina man is charged with threatening to use a weapon of mass destruction and an explosive device. Police say they found no bomb in his truck. They did discover what they say are possible bomb-making materials. He was ordered held without bail pending a medical screening. We'll turn now to the big shakeup at the game show Jeopardy! After a string of controversies, the new host now out after getting that title just last week. Here's Joe Fryer.
Tonight, Jeopardy! Is looking for a new host again. Mike Richards, the man initially tapped to replace Alex Trebek, stepped down today following a bombshell report by The Ringer. The story highlighted controversial comments made by Richards 7 years ago on his podcast, The Random Show. According to The Ringer, Richards made disparaging remarks about little people, those with mental disabilities, and Jewish people, along with sexist jokes about women's bodies.
Objectively, she is not attractive, and she does not have a great body.
In a note sent to Jeopardy! Staff this morning, Richards said moving forward as host would be too much of a distraction for our fans and not the right move for the show. Sony Pictures Television said today it supports Richards' decision, adding, "We were surprised this week to learn of Mike's 2013-2014 podcast and the offensive language he used in the past." Richards, who plans to stay on as Jeopardy's executive producer, says the show will bring back guest hosts until it finds a permanent replacement.
It's an awkward position for the guy who clearly really wanted to be the host to then be in the position of choosing the next host. I don't know how much longer he can hang on as executive producer.
So for now, once again, there's no answer to the question, who is the host of Jeopardy? Joe Fryer, NBC News.
Still ahead for us tonight in the wake of this summer's deadly heat waves, the growing outrage over the lack of life-saving air conditioning for so many. July was the hottest month ever recorded on Earth. Those scorching temperatures killing hundreds in the U.S., and it's raising new questions about why access to life-saving air conditioning is out of reach for so many Americans. Miguel Almaguer has more.
The oppressive heat waves now gripping our nation are not only hotter, but also deadlier. Even in the cool Pacific Northwest, temperatures soared up to 116 degrees in Portland this summer. Hundreds lost their lives, and according to one report, most died alone in homes with no working air conditioning or fans.
I'm just sweating and crying and whispering to myself, I don't know what to do.
Shane Brown says it was 108 degrees when he found his mother Jolene inside her low-income housing unit. She used her Social Security to pay rent on an apartment that offered no AC. She's one of Oregon's 96 confirmed fatalities.
There should be ways to get those items and those things without having to put other parts of your life at risk.
Every year, extreme heat kills some 600 in the U.S., more than any other weather event. But the federal government, Oregon and most states, have no broad mandates for cooling devices, even for the poor and elderly in publicly subsidized housing.
We do need to adjust our baseline of what is considered adequate for a person to live and be safe in their home.
Just a few miles away from where Jolene Brown died, Linda Aiken watched in horror as her neighbor was wheeled out on a gurney, losing his life to heat stroke.
Do you think laws need to change?
Yes. I never want to see this, my neighbor going out in a body bag.
Home Forward, which operates affordable housing where multiple people lost their lives, says they can't afford to put AC units inside every residence, adding in a statement, given the scale of the climate crisis, we need all the support we can get.
But the federal government has cut over $1 billion in funding to help low-income families pay energy bills, and few cities have laws requiring landlords to offer air conditioning.
I definitely think it's going to happen again.
Tonight, Shane Brown is speaking out for those like his mother, the poor, the elderly, and the Americans who lack basic access to something so many take for granted every day. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News, Portland.
We turn now to the families of the fallen. We told you earlier about the chaos as people desperately try to flee Afghanistan. It's just the latest heartbreak for the children of Americans who made the ultimate sacrifice there. Here's Peter Alexander.
Those images of desperate Afghans clinging to American planes, the chaos as the Taliban quickly recaptured the country, has been unbearable for Keely Quinlan.
Feels a lot like the rug was pulled out from underneath a lot of us, and I'm struggling, honestly, to come to terms with it.
That war altered the course of her life. Her father, Chief Warrant Officer John Quinlan, was killed in 2007 when the Chinook helicopter he was piloting crashed in southern Afghanistan. Keely was just 10. To this day, she remembers when the doorbell rang at the Tennessee home where she still lives.
I peeked through those side, glass panes, and just saw 2 pairs of shiny dress shoes, military issue. I just remember falling to the floor.
You knew?
I knew. It was like a lightning strike.
Quinlan was a towering figure in life and now in Keely's memories.
He was 6'4", goofy as all get out, the fun parent. Sorry, Mom.
Like the Halloween he showed up at her elementary school dressed as Miss New Jersey in curlers and pantyhose.
I was mortified. And he's walking into our cafeteria and screams, "Grandma, Quinlan's here to see you." And I'm just pink.
Amira Good's only memories of her dad are those shared by her grandparents.
They tell me so many stories. He was just such a lively guy, just full of life.
Army Corporal Jordan Good died in 2007 from a roadside bomb. Amira was just 2 years old.
I just know that me and my dad would have gotten along so well, and we would have been best friends.
Until this last week, for many Americans, Afghanistan was the forgotten war, but not for Amira and Keely.
For me, it can't be. So many people made so many sacrifices, and so did their families.
Is this war forgotten to you?
No. It'll forever be a part of me in some way or another.
And now a final chapter she never expected.
To hear those narratives of your parent being hero, your parent sacrificing so much, then to see it all unravel, and I don't think there will ever be anything that makes me feel better about it.
A loss that can't be undone. Peter Alexander, NBC News, Clarksville, Tennessee.
When we come back here tonight, this college graduate's incredible milestone inspiring America. Finally tonight, inspiring America and the college graduate defying overwhelming odds to make his dream come true. For Corey Borner, this day was a step into his future. The Texas graduate paralyzed from the waist down, receiving his diploma on his own 2 feet.
You did it.
As a high school football player, Corey severely injured his spinal cord during practice.
I was telling the coach, one more play. And as soon as that one play occurred, I had my head down just a little too low, and I couldn't move nothing from my neck all the way down to my feet.
For the last few months, Corey worked with his doctors to walk with a robotic exoskeleton suit. In June, he took his first step since the injury. And now, after 3 years at the University of North Texas at Dallas, Corey surprising his friends and family in his cap, gown, and the same robotic suit, walking on stage.
I always dreamed of this moment to be able to walk across and surprise people. It was just so amazing.
A dream come true for Corey, but also for his mother, Charlotte.
I love you.
He can do anything that he want to do, that he can do, he's going to try and do.
Corey is eager to push forward one step at a time.
That's one thing about life. It's gonna be hard. It's how you get through life. That smile and that positive attitude will lead you the right way.
Standing tall and looking good. That's Nightly News for this Friday. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Have a great weekend, and please take care of yourself and each other. Good night. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.